It's Alyssa. Welcome back to the channel. We're going to talk about my Basic Bitches Guide to Classics. This video is inspired by Kieran over at Katie Books. He came out with 3 different videos, I think it's 3, that talk about different top 10 classic books in his humble opinion. That sparked a lot of other people in the community to make it their top 10 lists, which made me realize just how little I have read of a lot of the beloved classics that are out there. I thought it would be fun to make my top 10 list, which is essentially the basic girl's guide to classics, and maybe revisit it in a little bit of time after I've read some more things and see if it still holds water or if I would like to remove things. So we'll see. I'd love to know any of your favorite classics down below. I'd like to know your thoughts on any of these as well. But otherwise, I'm going to jump into this, and we're going to start right at the top with the Queen, Jane Austen. I'm going to pick Persuasion for this list, but I'm going to say that for me, I think this is a choice based on age of me as a reader. 20-year-old me would have picked Pride and Prejudice because I just feel like that hate to love story is so much more of a young reader's book. And Persuasion is so much more of an older reader, somebody who's been knocked around in love a little bit, somebody who's been around the block, somebody who has experienced things. I feel like that's the Persuasion reader. I feel like the young person who is just sort of bright-eyed and looking for love is more of a Pride and Prejudice reader. So I just think Persuasion is fantastic. I love that our characters are more mature. I love that they're kind of angry with each other, and Anne and Wentworth have to figure their shit out. It's so much more adult than any of her other stories and kind of relatable. I think that this is something that happens many times, whether this is somebody you ultimately marry or just somebody you date, where there's somebody that you've, like a lost love, somebody that you wanted to be with for some reason or other, but you couldn't be with them, and there's some bitterness that arises out of it. And then maybe if you're lucky, you guys can get past your bitterness and actually be together. And that doesn't happen often, but I think it's one of those things that makes like a Sally Rooney book so relatable to people. Is because there's these sort of tragic love stories where you're like, they should work, but they don't because they're just too flawed as individuals. So I don't know. I feel like I just love Persuasion. A basic bitches list can't exist without Jane Austen on it. Number 2, this should be obvious. Jane Eyre. I will die on this hill, but Jane Eyre is a feminist book. I don't care how emotionally abusive Mr. Rochester is. Mr. Rochester is not the point of this story. We are giving the man in this story too much importance. The point in this story is that Jane is going to succeed despite every odd set against her. Jane is going to succeed on her own terms. Jane has been orphaned, left with terrible parents, sent to a terrible school where her best friend dies, and is now just adrift in the world. But no, Jane is going to learn languages. She's going to make a living for herself. Jane is only going to submit to Rochester on her terms when she can stand on her own 2 feet and doesn't need him. It's a feminist tale. And it's good. And it's gothic. And so many books pull on themes from Jane Eyre. I don't want to hear it. I will die on this hill. Jane Eyre is the shit. Jane Eyre. Number 3, The Well of Loneliness by Radcliffe Hall. This is a sapphic tale from the 20s. It reads really easily and is very relatable even today in its themes. We follow Stephen, who doesn't really ever feel like she's a girl, and she grapples with those feelings a lot. There's a lot of psychology involved in this book. You're in Stephen's mind while she tries to figure out who she is and what she wants and how does she follow societal norms. It's a really interesting story that I think still holds water today. I think that it's worth the read despite the few gut punches you get as you're reading it from random racist moments, because you can't avoid the racist moments in classics. It just seems to happen. Next up is The House of Mirth by Edith Wharton. This is the first Edith Wharton that I read as an adult and not for high school or English class or something. And I really loved this. I think as a teenager, I missed how approachable Wharton is as a writer, and I wish I had read this as a teenager because I feel like this story is very compelling. Lily Bart and her struggle to survive is very compelling. It pulls on a lot of the same themes as the next book on this list, but Lily Bart attempts to succeed despite all the ways that society is preventing her from doing so. The House of Mirth is set in the Gilded Age, in Edwardian America, and some of Europe. And Lily Bart is our main character, and she is trying to maintain all the social norms that she has to maintain as somebody in the upper echelons of New York, but is also somebody that doesn't really have any money. So she has all of the social trappings, but none of the money. And that leads her to be put in some really terrible situations that lead to her kind of ruin socially. And you kind of watch her descent from, you know, the high levels of society to the bottom. And it's really tragic. And you really feel for Lily. And you're mad at people because Lily herself, there's nothing wrong with Lily. Society is doing this to Lily. It really reminded me of the next book on the list. So we're just going to talk about this because it's hard for me to try to talk about these two separately. And that is Tess of the Dupervilles, because Tess is very similar to Lily, in my opinion. Lily, like Tess, is this really innocent woman that Hardy has set up to be ruined. And she's not ruined by her own fault. She was ruined by her naivete. She's ruined by the society around her. She's ruined by the failings of men. And I really love how these two stories play off of each other. And I feel like they'd be great to read as a pairing. I also feel like if you've tried Tess and you can't get into Tess because Hardy's writing is a little bit more, it's a little bit more biblical, it's a little bit more unapproachable in some ways than, say, Wharton is. Give Wharton a try because I feel like you would really enjoy the themes that both these books explore. They're both really good. So it's 4 and 5. Number 6 is Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. Frankly, I think you could read almost anything by Virginia Woolf. I love Virginia Woolf. I think she has this beautiful way of putting words together to create like a hypnotic sound. I really like listening to Virginia Woolf because every word is just so beautifully paired with the next word after it. It's not just about crafting like a well-constructed sentence. It's about a mastery of language in and of itself. But Mrs. Dalloway is something that's very close to my heart because I read it. I try to read it every year. I didn't read last year though. Is the first true stream of conscious story that I'm aware of. It follows Mrs. Dalloway. She's getting ready for a party, but really you're going through London on this day where Mrs. Dalloway's gonna have a party, and there's a lot of moving back and forth in time. There's a lot of little things that are crammed into this super short book that you can miss so much while reading it. So it just always kind of feels fresh and new every time I read it. I think my favorite parts of Mrs. Dalloway is the discussion of the soldier that they see in the park and his psychological breakdown after World War One. I think that that piece is so beautifully executed, and it's where my mind keeps coming back to over and over and over again when I think about Mrs. Dalloway. And I just think if you're going to read Stream of Consciousness, read Mrs. Dalloway, give it a shot. You might hate it. It's a love or hate it kind of structure, but I love Mrs. Dalloway. I love me some Virginia Woolf. If that doesn't suit you, try Orlando. It's fun. It's a good time. It is mind bending and great. Next up is Passing by Nella Larson. This is also a very short book, very differently written. There is an economy of language in the story that is just perfection. Naomi and I have many episodes somewhere on this channel where we have broken down the entire book, each part of the book, like in detail. Like I think there's like 6 hours of us talking about this book because it is so beautifully written. And the whole book is just, it's so good. Just, I don't even know how to articulate this clearly and succinctly for you because I have spent 6 hours to talking about this. And I don't know if I need to talk about this anymore. The book is beautiful. It's so well written. I'm so mad that there's no more Nella Larsons. Like there's only like 2 Nella Larson books and that's it, because somewhere, I think book 3, she got accused of plagiarism, and I don't believe it was true, but it was enough to ruin her writing career, and then she became a nurse. I like secretly have this wish that somebody will find a secret cache of Nella Larson writings. I wish I could go back in time and meet her because she was apparently a fantastic nurse. Like I find Nella Larson as an author incredibly compelling, and this story is so good, and the ending is so good. Like Claire is so dislikable, but also you feel for her in some ways. It is so good. Needs to be read. Feel like I don't need to talk about this a lot because I feel like this should be an obvious thing that should be on any basic list of classics, and that is 1984 by George Orwell. If you need one reason to read 1984, it is so that you can actually explain to people who like to try to say things are just like 1984, but they're absolutely wrong, and you know that they've never read the book. You can explain to them exactly what the book is about. Because a lot of people like to reference 1984 when they don't actually know what the book's about, and you can school them if you've read it. It's also really good. It's a good book. I don't have a lot to say about it. It's 1984. Does anybody else need to talk about it? No. Number 9 is East of Eden by John Steinbeck. This book is huge. Its chunky nature is scary, but it is a delicious family saga with possibly one of the most evil characters ever put on the page. It is so good. I never thought that I would like something like this. I feel like I remember being forced to read The Grapes of Wrath and Of Mice and Men, and because I was being forced to read it in English class and I wasn't very good at English class, I had a lot of negative connections and thoughts around Steinbeck. But as an adult revisiting Steinbeck, East of Eden is this shit. It is so good. There's like a bit of spice, there's drama, there's like tragedy, there's racism because it's a classic, but it is so good and so worth the read. Don't let the chunkiness scare you. Last but not least, number 10, Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. This book is gripping and sad and queer and beautiful, and the thing that I am most upset about is that the great James Baldwin is no longer with us to make audiobooks of his books for us. Because could you imagine listening to all of Giovanni's Room being read by the great and wonderful James Baldwin? Could you imagine that? The eargasms I would have. Ugh. Giovanni's Room is wonderful. It is about this American man who is in Paris, and he is engaged to this woman, but not really. He is engaged to her, but it's very much like a beard situation going on here. And he develops this relationship while his fiance is in Italy or somewhere, like she's off somewhere. And he develops this relationship with Giovanni, who's this Italian bartender. Yeah, bartender at this gay club that he goes to. Our main character is very deeply entrenched in like queer culture in Paris. A lot of the book is centered in Giovanni's room, and it's the time they spend in Giovanni's room, and our main character like thinking about Giovanni's room. But also, you know from the very beginning that something very bad is going to be happening to Giovanni. So there's a lot of dread as you're reading this book, as you roll towards the truth of why there's this really bad thing that's going to be happening to Giovanni. And you really dislike our main character so much. So much. It is so brilliantly done. It is short and beautiful. And if you've read East of Eden, if you've gone through this list, you've gotten through East of Eden, and you did this in order, you will get to Giovanni's Room and you'd be like, excellent, nice short book, because I don't want to read another 700 pages. But let me tell you, don't be fooled. There's a lot in this short little book, and it is beautiful and tragic and moving, and it has to be on a basic bitches list of classics. So there you have it. That is my list. I'd love to know what your books are, your thoughts, etc., 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 down in the comments below. Remember, there's a Patreon where we have a book club, and I attempt to be articulate over there. And otherwise, please consider liking and subscribing. We are getting so close to 1,000 subs, so thank you to everybody who's new here. And otherwise, I'll see you guys in my next video, whatever it may be, because it's my channel and I can do whatever I want. Bye.
So just sit with me, talking to the night until the morning.